Hello, everyone, and welcome to one more lesson of the course Initiation into Spiritism by the United States Spirits Federation. My name is Cintya Guimaraes, and I'm part of the Spiritist Society of Chicago in Chicago, Illinois. It's great to be here with you today, and we will be talking about inequalities of wealth. In today's lesson, which is lesson 19 and corresponds to chapter 22 of the book by the same name, authored by Teresinha Oliveira. In case you are following the book, you can just check this lesson in chapter 22 of the book. In today's lesson, we will see what the Spiritist views are relating to this topic. We will see and learn what Spiritism teaches us about inequalities of wealth, about social economic disparities, and related matters. I am sure that you all have thought about and even discussed and talked about topics relating to this matter. Questions such as, why do some have so much while others so little? Why some are born poor while others are born with a silver spoon in their mouths? Why is it so hard to make a living? Well, from the very beginning, we can say right away that only reincarnation can rationally unveil the reasons for the unequal distribution and enjoyment of wealth on earth. We will not find logical, rational, sensible answers if we turn only to the current times and to the physical domain knowledge. Science will not help us much here. The trilogy, birth, life, and death, will not make much sense to help us understand these inequalities. For starters, reincarnation is the belief that the spirit has many different corporeal lives in which the spirit improves itself, develops, and also rids itself from vices that it has and acquires virtues. There's a no-brainer there, since this happens all over nature. Everything in nature evolves, gets better, improved. This is according to the laws of the universe, which reflects the infinite goodness, justice, and wisdom of God. We have to keep in mind that we are spirits, and as part of our evolutionary journey, we have to spend and live on earth. Spirit lives in the spiritual world, but also in order to evolve, it needs to live on earth as well. And when it is on earth, it needs a body. That's when we say that we are incarnated. So the body is the instrument of the spirit, and the spirit is in the greatest service in order to fulfill God's will in us. What does that mean? This means that we are here on earth to learn compassion, solidarity, patience, love, and so many other virtues that we don't have. We don't have in a certain reincarnation. Reincarnation is then key to help us understand the apparent conundrum of earth economic disparities and unequal distribution of wealth, which has perpetuated on Earth since we humans started roaming the planet. So now that we understand a little bit more the relationship between wealth inequalities and how reincarnation plays a role into it, let's look into some hypotheses and some possibilities, right, that could perhaps uh, help us understand, right, um, what solutions could exist for this problem. So, what if everybody were rich, right? If everybody were rich, would that solve the problem? And the answer is as simple as it is logical. No, because everyone is different. Each individual on the face of Earth is different from one another. Among the approximate 8 billion people that dwells the planet, each one has their own different people have different personalities, different faculties, different weaknesses, different abilities. Not everybody is equally intelligent, laborious, lazy, meticulous, hardworking, cautious, and moderate, and so on and so forth. It results that not everybody has what it takes to acquire and maintain material possessions on earth. Now, if not everybody, right, can acquire wealth, then what if wealth was equally distributed to all of the dwellers of the planet? Would that help the problem? And the answer is equally no, it would not. And because of the same answer. Because of the many different distinct personalities that each one of us have, right? We have our weaknesses, we have our abilities, our talents, our inabilities and inaptitudes. Some would be able to maintain that wealth that portion of wealth that was distributed to them, and others would not. We can clearly see that the status quo, that is, the existing situation before the equal distribution, right, would soon go back to what it was before that same distribution, because people have different abilities or weaknesses to work to manage that portion of wealth that was distributed to them. So some may even produce a little bit more, but some others would not. They would probably lose everything that they got. And likely in going back to the very same situation that was before. So this would not work. At this time and age of our evolution, this formula definitely would not work for humans, because humans still do not have the balance, the equilibrium that exists in the universe. The human race, in fact, disturbs this very balance. The human race mismanage all of the assets of creation that God has given us, that God has given to us. Now, from another angle, if we all were given everything that we need freely from the hands of God, would that help? And I will answer with another question to you. What incentive would we have to study, to work, to invent and create great things if we had it all given to us for free without any efforts from our part? Not much, right? We would not have much incentive to do much. We'd probably we'd probably sit in front of the TV and binge on our favorite movies or series on HBO or Netflix or Hulu's of life, right? We would not do much. Again, at our stage of evolution, we'd be prone to being idle. We would be inclined to the easy, not the busy. We'd have no motivation to make useful, productive efforts of any sort. There would be stagnation on earth. Humankind would be deprived of progress, of development, of advancement, of illumination. There would not be economic development, and all great discoveries, artistic works, intellectual progress would never come to exist. We'd never develop the drive to be or do anything for society at large or for ourselves. Needless to say, this is not natural. This was not what we were created for. Nothing is worse than the paralysis of the searches, meaning when one stops looking for other horizons, this establishes a paralysis that is detrimental, that is harmful. As everything in the universe, we are on a constant path of evolution. Either we want it or not, either we believe it or not, this is God's will, the inexorable law of progress. Part of humans' mission here on the planet is to work for the material improvement of the planet. We are here to help cleanse the planet, to improve it, to prepare it for when Earth will receive the maximum amount of dwellers that it can hold. And to carry those tasks, we need material needs to support the new inventions, to support discoveries, to support research, testings, projects. That's when wealth come into play. Wealth comes to make all of this happens. And the work that humans do in order to acquire the needs to satisfy their material needs, right, will cause them to develop their intelligence. In turn, the intelligence that we concentrate in satisfying our material needs will later develop into and help us understand the great moral truths of the universe. Wealth is then a creating force. It is an element of progress. When used well, wealth leads not only to material and intellectual progress, but it also leads to moral progress for the individuals and for society at large. The providential utility and benefit of wealth, one of them, right, is to control poverty. So wealth is clearly an instrument also of spiritual progress. The correct use that that wealth brings, right, is by means of the work that men develop. God helps man and woman, helps the man and the woman through the man and the woman. Do you remember when we talked about being in higher service, that the body is the instrument of the spirit, who in turn is here at a higher service to fulfill God's will. So yes, so we are here to fulfill God's will, and through wealth from those that have it in his or her hands, help can be given to those that do not have wealth in their hands, not only via material needs, but via material help, but also the help that is brought with more education, with more innovation, with more progress that benefits society at large. And although wealth is an agent of progress, it does not come light or devoid of challenges. Because, and this is because of the facilities that wealth brings to material needs, and beyond real needs. Wealth provides people with a lot of material elements, and people can get overwhelmed, confused with that. And that can cause them to fall into traps. And those traps will cause people to abuse wealth. So it is not correct to say that wealth per se is a negative element. But when people with wealth in their hands are caught by the many temptations that wealth brings, by the limitless possibilities that also entails, wealth then can become an evil element. And because of the diverse personalities and the different levels of moral evolution, because of the different levels of weaknesses and inabilities and inaptitudes that the many people on earth have, these elements that come with wealth can give rise to greed, to egocentrism, to pride, and so many other vices, which can turn what was once a gift from God into something useless and harmful. If one would question then, why, if that is the case, why does God put in the hands of the incapable elements of wealth? And we can list here a few reasons to explain why this is the case. For one, because in our journey to relative perfection, and it's relative because only God is perfect, but we will have our space under the sun, because we are destined to relative perfection. Well, in that journey, we need to learn how to handle the many different situations that we come to face. All situations, all conditions, including the condition of wealth. For two, when the spirit is in the spiritual realm, before it reincarnates, it can ask to have wealth in its hands, to be born again, to reincarnate in a wealthy situation in order to do good or to learn how to do good. And for three, wealth could also be a case of expiation. Well, so far, everything that we said about wealth could also apply to poverty. For now, on earth, wealth is for a few only. Most of us struggle to survive, owing only medium possessions or even facing poverty, facing misery. And no wonder, uh, no wonder this fact, because we can clearly see that in the many statistics that will show us the distribution of wealth, the poverty level, and how many people are in poverty, how many people are in wealthy situations. And we can clearly see that most of the population of Earth is under poverty conditions. And even here in the United States, the country that is, or the richest country in the world, we can see that there are people below the poverty lines. So the reason for this, or the reason for poverty predominating on the face of earth, lies not only because of the unequal distribution of wealth, faults ourselves and unfortunately still us, right? But also because we human beings do not know how to create wealth and to maintain it. We are unable, we are unable to produce wealth. Another reason could be, or is, because we simply do not want to make efforts. We are too laid back, right? We may just say that I'm good here. Don't worry about me. I'm fine, right? We simply are laid back, and we do not want to bother with endeavoring efforts to progress materially or in any other aspect. This is a realistic reason. Do you remember in the beginning again when we talk about people and with their different personalities, with their different level of evolution, with their weaknesses and inaptitudes or talents and skills? So that is the case. In poverty, God wants us to learn and acquire the virtues of submission, humility, patience, resignation, and others that poverty, well understood, inspire in the spirit. In wealth, God wants us to learn and acquire different virtues: the virtue of charity, the virtue of self denial, of compassion, and similar others. Poverty can lead to endless complaints about everything and everyone, including God. It's easy to get discouraged or dismayed by numerous constant paucity of material needs, shortcomings, difficulties of a life in poverty. A person devoid of material means can easily develop anger, jealousy, envy, rebelliousness. And these states of mind may lead one that is destitute to commit crimes or other evil acts in order to get what one desires, what one covets, and cannot get because of lack of means. Wealth and power are hand in hand. This duo can easily corrupt the spirit and make one fall for the hypnotizing chant of the excesses, can fall for the creation of endless false needs. can also develop indifference to the suffering of others, can fall for the seduction of earthly illusionary pleasures, and also fall for the exacerbated well-being and sensualism. These are all forces that firmly ties us to earth, to the matter, and move us away from the things of the spirit. And it makes us delay our moral development and also delay our journey towards spiritual perfection. Wealth is the quintessential exciter of pride and selfishness. So at this point, it is now natural for us to say and understand that we all will experience poverty or wealth in one or more of our many corporeal existences or reincarnations. We will be either poor or wealthy in the future, or we were poor and wealthy in the past, or we can still be it again. There's so many variables. It depends. And if we face these situations, what should our conduct be? Let's take a look at this chart that let me go to the chart. Let's take a look at this chart that can help us, that can guide us in one or the other situation that we may come to encounter in one of our reincarnations, or we may be even encountering it now. So, in a situation of poverty, we should take care of the little possessions that we have. It doesn't matter how little. We should take good care and make the best use that we can possibly find, using them wisely. If in a situation of poverty, we should try to develop and improve our ability, our capacity to produce the things that we need to satisfy our material needs. We need to try to do that ourselves. And it is very important that we know ourselves, that we figure out who we are, that we look at ourselves in the mirror and put ourselves under the microscope to really understand who we really are, what types of vices we have, what types of virtues we have. Because like in the business plan, we need to identify where the issues are so that we can fix them. We tend to think that we are good because we don't commit crimes or horrendous, heinous acts of evil. But it is much more than that. Our journey to our evolutionary journey depends very much on our knowing ourselves, identifying where we need to fix ourselves. And that will work for both situations of poor or wealth and in everything else in life. We need to be vigilant. Once we know ourselves, we need to be vigilant and be conscientious and aware not to fall into the vices of, especially of those that are typical of the situation that we're facing. And we should also endeavor to develop the virtues. In poverty, the virtues of resignation, of patience, of honesty, and all of the virtues that the trial of poverty stimulates when it's well understood. When we are poor, we should practice charitable love. What is charitable love? Well, there's a subset here. There's the material charitable love, and there is the spiritual the charitable love. The material one consists in helping others who may have less than us, because we always will find people that have less than us. The spiritual charitable love consists of helping others by giving moral support, but by being a sincere friend, extending sincere friendship, by extending affection, true affection to others, by being loyal, by extending moral comfort to others, and by providing good examples with all of the above. Also, uh, uh, we should not talk bad or think bad about the rich, because they too are facing a trial, the trial of wealth that we just talked about, right? And that does not come lightly. They deserve, the rich, if we're poor, we have to think of the rich as deserving compassion and assistance. If they are doing wrong, they're not carrying their trial of wealth very well. Or they will deserve our respect if they are indeed doing well and handling the wealth in their hands well. In situations of wealth, right? And a little bit before we talk about wealth, let us talk a little bit more about the poor, about poverty, because in poverty, we should not lament, as Leon Denis teaches us. Leon Denis is a noble, or was a noble philosopher and exponent in Spiritism after the death of Allan Kardec. And Allan Kardec, in turn compiled all the 5 books of the Spirit's codification. Leon Denis, in his book, After Death, tells us that the task of the humble, he calls humble the poor, right? He says that the tasks of the poor are more meritorious, because the poor bear the weight of civilization, since humankind lives and feeds on their work. He goes further and teaches us that the poor should be considered sacred, because, as he well reminds us, this is the condition in which Jesus decided and wanted to be born, live, and die on earth. So poverty teaches us to sympathize to the suffering of others, as we said. It teaches us to see beauty and value in things that are indifferent to those who have everything and face no material deprivation. Now, in a situation of wealth, one should not forget that the only true possessions that one has is those of the spirit. And also, one should remember that one is only the trustee of material possessions that God has entrusted in this person's hands. The wealthy should seek the incorruptible wealth of spiritual light, which is the only one, again, that one may possess. And this spiritual light is obtained by that higher service that we talked about in the beginning and throughout our lesson, right? Because that higher service is the service where we fulfill God's will through us. And that means when we service our neighbor, when we extend charity to those that are in need. So if all of this fails, and again, before we start going to the end of our lesson, we also want to point out that for the rich, for the wealthy as well, that know yourself, that comes even from the Greek oracle. So important for one to look in the mirror and honestly realize, identify where we have our vices, where we need to change, where we need to develop the virtues that are those that will cause us to succeed in the trial of wealth. And with that, we will multiply, will help multiply the benefits that we will extend to others. We will alleviate the suffer of others. This will all pinpoint to the success of the trial of wealth. Now, finally, if everything fails, right? If we forget about all of that, then we should look at this suggestion, which is actually more than a suggestion. It's a divine commandment of our beloved Master Jesus. Love one another. Those driven by love towards their neighbor have found their line of action. With love and wisdom, we will always find the best use of wealth, the best conduct in poverty. So if everything else fails and if we forget all of those items that we discussed in the chart, love one another is the suggestion. It's actually much more than a suggestion. It's the commandment. It's a divine commandment that our beloved Master Jesus left for us. Those driven by love towards their neighbor have found their line of action. With love and divine wisdom, we will always find the best use of wealth and the best conduct in poverty. Let's end the lesson on a positive note. And keep in mind that with the intellectual and moral evolution of Earth, as well as that of its dwellers, the extremes of total destitution and excessive wealth will be corrected, will reduce. Also, because we humans will be better, we'll learn. As we evolve, we will learn better how to produce and manage and distribute the resources of wealth that wealth creates. That wealth creates. And we will also be better at understanding, at loving one another. I want to thank you very much for attending and participating in this lesson with us. And before we end, let's go to the questions. What trial is more difficult, wealth or poverty? And the answer is both are equally dangerous. As we studied, both of them bring their own set of challenges, and none of them is easier than the other. It is fair to say, however, that the Gospel According to Spiritism, that is one of the main books of the codification, the Spirit's codification, suggests in one of its chapters that wealth is a bit more challenging, is more difficult because of the facilities, the possibilities, the material possibilities that it provides to the incarnated spirits. to the incarnated spirit. And because the spirit is on earth, is in a material world with a lot of material temptations, it becomes a very tough trial for the spirit to end up successful. But we already have a lot of ammunition, a lot of wisdom. We studied this lesson and we know how to do it. Let's go to the next question. Is it correct to give alms? This is a good question. And fortunately for us, the Gospel according to Spiritism gives us great guidance as to that. The Gospel according to Spiritism tells us that, yes, we should give alms when needed, when necessary. But to the extent possible, we should convert alms into wages, into salaries. What does that mean? It means that the preferred position is for us to, instead of simply giving alms, that we extend possibilities of our neighbor that is less privileged than us to get to make a living in a dignified way. It's also true that we will find people in the streets in needs, and we are not always, and more often than not, we are not in a position to create opportunities, to provide a job or a sustainable means for a person to make a living honestly and in a dignified way. So in those cases, if we really feel that our heart is telling us that we should give, that we want to give alms, we should go ahead and do it. Many times, some people prefer to reach out and resort to institutions, not for profits, that's specialized in helping those in need. But there are other people that have a dilemma because they do not know what the recipient will do with the alms that it received. And that should not be something for us to think about and stop us from doing what our heart tells us to do, that is to help those in need, because we do not control what the recipient will do, as we do not control what anybody does. Except for ourselves, we do not control in that situation, in any other situation of life. So we should always remember that we are here to help one another, compassion, charity. And if we see a fire, while the firemen don't arrive, why not throw our bucket of water in order to help, even if a little bit? I hope that helps. Let's go to our next and last question. What to think of those that buy very luxury items, very expensive luxury items? Well, we studied in this lesson that God does not condemn wealth, that wealth is an agent of progress. It's a creating force of opportunity. So if one has the money that it earned honestly with his or her own efforts and buys an item that is expensive, a luxury item, probably that money paid will circulate and help the industry that is behind the luxury item. That is, that money that was paid by the wealthy person will likely sustain, keep the factory, the industry that in turn will continue producing and giving jobs, giving opportunity even for more people perhaps to work and make a living. So we should not see things sometimes just through one type of lenses. We should see it within the context and how much could be behind it. And we should also say that that person that spent a good amount of money in a luxury item should also more directly help those in need by probably contributing with the excess of wealth that it has in order to help those, again, that are in need via donation to specific institutions or helping with creating more opportunity for education, for opportunity for courses to make people, to enable people to have more opportunities in life. That would be the ideal position that a person with a lot of wealth that buys luxury items should have. I hope that that helps a little bit too. And at this point, we want to really thank you for attending this class, for participating with us. And please be tuned for the next lesson in the course, Initiation into Spiritism. Thank you very much and much peace. Goodbye.